American philosopher Richard Rorty talked about religion as a conversation stopper. When religion enters the public square, he was concerned about democratic ideals and kind of ideal situations for democracy in particular, but what dialogue can actually get at and how we can have rational dialogue. And what he was saying about religion is that when articles of faith are used as kind of the conclusion of a conversation, when claims are being made, that's where the conversation stops, especially if the person you're dialoguing with doesn't share those articles of faith. They're not publicly scrutable, and they're not publicly able to be kind of trafficked in quote reasonable realms where both people can at least have an argument about it. In your book, you're talking about engaging culture very clearly. So what do you think about this claim that religion is a conversation stopper? Because as our center, the name of it is Religious Diversity in Public Life. So we're looking at how religion intersects with the public domain, and there's always tricky ways in which that happens. But is Rorty's claim something that, well, I can maybe guess your answer, but I want to hear it from you.
No, yeah, what would that answer be?
No, it's not.
It's unfortunate that people would think of it as a conversation stopper, because I understand it in the policy realm where we're going to have deep differences and disagreements. But it's interesting obviously in a republic, a democracy like ours, we all have the freedom to express ideas. That's what's great. And I think we need that freedom to be able to do that, and to be able to persuade and convince and cajole and do whatever we need to do to keep it working. I find it fascinating when you look at the moral values that the country, I think there was, and I think this is part of the culture war problem. When you go back, and I mentioned to a couple of folks earlier, when you go back to the 1930s, a lot of the folks that are known as the culture warriors, Jerry Falwell, Dr. Kennedy, in the Christian circles, Dr. Dobson, and some others, I think, if not all of them, most of them were born in the 1930s. And so you grew up in a country that had a general moral consensus. If you can think back, I was watching the other night, I got two boys, so we were watching TV Land. Anybody watch that? So it's on. And we do antennas, so it's free TV. And we were watching it, and Dragnet was on. There's some show about a little boy that stole the baby Jesus at Christmas in his new red wagon, and they brought Dragnet out to find out who stole baby Jesus. To put it in today's culture, I'm sitting watching this going, how did this ever get on air? But at the end, there was all this deference to the church, and they were talking about the poor boy, and he was in poverty, and the fact that he got this wagon and wanted to show off the baby Jesus. And then you got, who was it, Friday? The detective looks at the priest and says, well, maybe the poor boy has more courage and understanding than we do. And then it pans to the cross. Oh, and you got angels singing. This is Dragnet. Okay, that's the world that they grew up in, that I had a kind of, in the 60s, we were still kind of there. So when you look at that moral consensus, when it begins to unravel from their perspective, some people with an opposite opinion would say it finally started getting sorted out. I understand that. So I'm just trying to express the feeling. So they're feeling like that unraveling is occurring. I think the instinct was to hunker down and try to preserve, build a fence, build that barbed wire fence. We got to hold on to these things. And, I think it's completely natural. Now we're in a culture of multiculturalism, of multi-faith, and we don't have that moral consensus like we once did. And I think in that context, that's where all the tension is created. I don't think we would have had this discussion in the 1950s or 60s even. Really. Maybe at UC Berkeley. Maybe. But there was that consensus. And so when I look at it, I think that's part of the problem. I think the stopper is more now than it was 40 years ago. I don't think bringing faith in the public square was really a showstopper back then. In fact, I think everybody patted each other on the back. And so the other thing I would say internationally when you travel, the areas where you have moral consensus around the world, whether, and I'm saying loosely consensus, but whether it's Hinduism or Buddhism or Christianity, there's a tension in this country and a lot of angst toward Christianity. But if you're in the Middle East, in a Muslim country, try to talk about diversity and other things, I think you would feel that same angst because you have the same conflict, whether it was in most of your major religions. You're the religion professor, so I don't want to step on your toes. But I think you'd have this conflict between secularism and moral values, and where are those derived, and how do they play out in the public square.
Thank you.